Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Vicenza Oro September 2021. I'm Marco Carniello, I'm the director of the Jewelry and Fashion Division of Italian Exhibition Group, and on behalf of my team and the company, I'll thank you for being here physically and also online on our web channel. It's a very special edition today because we are opening a show after 21 months we stopped. Was a forced stop, but we are here. We really believed in it. It was definitely a question of courage. Yes, we took our risks, but it's much more about responsibility. We feel to have the responsibility for the sector because we are a platform for the sector to serve better you, the association, our exhibitors, the buyers, the researchers, everyone. So thanks for being here. And because we're talking about sustainability, responsibility is obviously, we're talking about sustainability as well. And we are celebrating how many? 12 years of relationship with CIBJO? And officially, yes, many more. So we have been doing a lot with CIBJO. We have been exploring different topics. Obviously, we as a fair, we are not entering within the topic, but we are leaving the big association. They have the credibility to discuss these things among all of you. And so I'm glad that also this year CIBJO is with us. Thanks, Mr. Cavalieri, for supporting the industry and being with us. And because we're talking about responsibility, I'm very glad that with CIBJO today we have also the Responsible Jewelry Council. Thanks, Aris, for being with us and in Vicenza. And obviously, Edward, who's already in the team since years. So thanks a lot for bringing here value and helping us to support the industry. Again, enjoy the show, and thanks, Mr. Cavalieri.
Thank you very much. Please don't go. We have heard many times since quite a long while now, everybody talking about sustainability, especially in the last few years, because the government, the people, the companies, everybody want to be and behave sustainably. I may remember when I was talking about sustainability over 20 years ago, the people was looking at me that's coming from another planet. Today, we are here, and we are going to present in this webinar, which is afterwards Mr. Edward Johnson will tell us about our webinars since the last few years. But we are here to talk about sustainability, in particular, the goal number 5, gender equality, and the goal number 12, sustainable consumption. I am very proud that we have done all this work since the last over 20 years, and today I want to welcome once more and again Iris van der Veken for being with us, and our partnership, which is goal number 17, with RJC, of which I am proud to be a founder member. But not only that, but we are going ahead hand to hand in order to reach whatever we will be able to reach in order to offer to the industry better quality of business, meaning sustainable business. Thank you very much.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from today. Thank you for taking your time on this busy Sunday. Welcome to Jewelry Industry Voices. This is the webinar series hosted by CIBJO, the World Jewelry Confederation, which looks at issues of interest in the jewelry business from the perspective of industry leaders from all around the world. We are with you for the next 2 hours with 2 separate topics and 2 separate panels of industry experts, both focusing on meeting the challenges of the UN's Sustainable Development Goal Framework, commonly known as the SDGs. We are live streaming via Vincenzo Oro's website, and we are being recorded and will be viewed later on CIBJO and Vincenzo Oro's YouTube channels for those that want to catch up. This event is not possible without the partnership and collaboration of a few organizations. So please let me take a minute to thank them. Firstly, thank you to our hosts, the Italian Exhibition Group and Vincenzo Oro. Marco and his team have again invited us back to this wonderful city and this wonderful, safe and vibrant event. It is very heartwarming for me personally to be back and to see the energy of the industry. So thank you, Marco, and all the team at IEG. Also, thanks to our co-presenters, the Responsible Jewelry Council, Iris here on stage with me, and all of her team. As has been mentioned already, SDG 17 is Partnership for the Goals, so we are actively working towards the framework of the SDGs through the partnerships and collaboration that drive our industry forward. Sincere thanks also from me to our Season 3 sponsors. This today represents the start of the next season of 12 months of monthly Jewelry Industry Voices webinars, which are viewed via our website and on Zoom, and which you will be hearing much more about if you follow CIBJO on social media. So I encourage you to do that to keep yourself updated. Our sponsors for Season 3 are the Natural Diamond Council, Platinum Guild International, Uni Diamonds, and the Paspali Pearling Company, and we thank them very much for their support and collaboration over the next 12 months. My name is Edward Johnson, and I am the moderator today for Jewelry Industry Voices. So thank you and welcome. Let me very quickly get in to introduce our panelists today. With me on stage here today is Iris van der Veken. Iris has led RJC since 2019 and is dedicated to contributing towards the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs. She is committed to gender equality and that agenda, and under her leadership, she launched the Generation Equality Campaign for the global jewelry and watch industry. She is also, incidentally, a previous 2-time panelist on Jewelry Industry Voices over the past year and a half. Iris, welcome, and it's nice to be seated with you again on stage.
Thank you for inviting me.
I am very much hoping that also online today we have Feriel Zerouki with us. Feriel has been with De Beers since 2005 and has an extensive experience designing collaborative partnerships across the diamond supply chain. Feriel is also on the board of directors of the World Diamond Council, the Responsible Jewelry Council, and is the general manager of GemFair. Feriel, welcome back to Jewelry Industry Voices. You have also joined us before. I can see you on screen.
Thank you, Ed. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
And next, we have joining us online from the United States today, Cristina Maria Villegas. Cristina is the Director of Mining at PACT. Now, PACT is a global non-profit organization, for those of you that don't know it. And Cristina is a top global expert in artisanal and small-scale mining, or ASM. She recently led the team that created Moyo Gems, a first-of-its-kind responsible mine-to-market sourcing program, which works with female, artisanal, colored gemstone miners in Tanzania. Earlier this year, she was awarded the Initiatives in Art and Culture Annual Award for Leadership in Responsible Practice in Jewelry. And Cristina is also a previous panelist with Jewelry Industry Voices. So Cristina, it's great to see you smiling down there, down the line to us. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Last but by no means least, Diana Kulilis is the Secretary General for the Swiss Better Gold Association. Diana joined sbga in 2018 after a career in humanitarian projects and as a CSR manager at the Chopard Group. Today, Diana leads sbga, a pioneering network representing the Swiss gold industry, which supports sustainable development of artisanal and small-scale miners and establishes responsible gold value chain. Cristina is joining us from Geneva today. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Cristina. Excuse me, Diana, apologies.
No problems. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Please note that none of the opinions or information offered this event constitutes any legal, financial, or official advice. CIBJO provides a global perspective on the gem and jewelry industry, and so for more precise information, we encourage you to please play an active part in your local or national trade associations and seek relevant for your location and business. The SDGs provide an integrated set of standards around which organizations can measure their contributions to issues of sustainable development. Adopted in 2015 by the United Nations member states, recently there has been a welcome increase in awareness about the growing importance of sustainability and the 17 SDG framework. These goals address the main challenges that faces the global community, including those related to poverty, social exclusion, environmental degradation, and climate change. These challenges call for action by all sectors of society, and many companies have started to voluntarily report against the SDGs in partnership with industry organizations. Today, we're focusing on two of them, SDG 5, gender equality, and also SDG 12, responsible consumption. If I can turn first to you, Iris, since you're next to me here in the room. I think making a difference is something that everybody would really like for us to start talking about. And in that sense, how is the jewelry industry as a whole, and RJC specifically, promoting SDG 5?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Gaetano Cavalieri and CIBJO for the opportunity to be here today and also to bring the topic of SDG 5 at the table, because it's a critical topic. If I go back to my own career I just turned 50, it's a milestone, 20 years in the industry. 20 years ago, I did not see many women at the board table. It was a very different energy in the room. Today, I can say with confidence that there's really a movement going on. And you were already talking about the 2015 agenda, the 2030 agenda established in 2015. I think it's for the first time that really the whole world has agreed, well, these goals are instrumental and are part of the sustainability agenda. And we know that SDG 5 is a multiplier. So going back to our industry, it is really interesting because we're an industry of emotions, and we know that 95% of women influence purchasing behavior, or their husband or their partner, or they do self-purchase. So what do we see, some of the trends, if we look at RJC members, and also I think some of the trends that came out of the report doing some stakeholder consultation? Well, first of all, we see within the industry that there's absolutely an enormous commitment to the 2030 agenda, and in particularly gender. So companies are starting to realize it's not just a moral imperative, but it's really, it's about economic viability. And I was saying earlier in one of the panels that, for example, data show that companies that are integrating gender are outperforming their peers by 21%. Second, what do we see in the jewelry industry is the need for more operationalizing of gender policies. So yes, you can have a great website, you can have a policy there. What we need to see is, how do you action it? And I'm sure we'll hear from my colleagues, my esteemed colleagues, they will talk about action on the ground and showing that action and what really impact is. And we see that companies are indeed looking at gender as part of a broader discussion on diversity and inclusion. A third element is data. We need reliable data and we need benchmarking. So I think there the industry does need to step up together across all the organizations, and that's why collaborations like with the Natural Diamond Council, World Diamond Council and CIBJO are so critical to get the data right, and so that we can measure, to know is to show. And finally, we need more transformational partnerships, because what we see is, as an industry, of course, we have a responsibility, and we know that we are 257 years behind with all industries. So how do we do it? But it means also that we need stronger collaboration on the ground with governments, and we need to scale that up. So those are some of my first thoughts, but I do want to say that I'm positive because I see the CEOs at the table taking this topic very seriously.
Yeah, I think that's important to point out that there really has been a shift right the way from the top all the way down through organizations about the importance of this. Feriel, if I can turn to you with your perspective from many years with De Beers and building those important partnerships in the diamond value chain, how do you create the right opportunities for there to be long-term equality of opportunity in this sector, the mining sector, for both women and men? I think we have the phrase of 2020 and 21, you're on mute.
I don't see myself.
You're good now, you're good to go.
Okay, perfect. First of all, I just wanted to start off by also extending my thanks and echoing the thanks that were said before me to Dr. Gaetano Cavalieri for inviting me here, and Vincenza Oro for setting the platform to have such important conversations. So thank you very much. So yes, I do represent the mining sector, and the mining sector itself presents very unique and significant challenges to achieving gender equality, because it's existed for over 100 years, and it's historically, as Iris mentioned, been very male-dominated at all levels. But this is true of so many sectors that have existed for over 100 years. And it's led to this entrenched perception and practices across society and even more broadly about the role of women. But as Iris mentioned, we have seen a significant shift in attitudes towards women in mining, as well as proven research on the benefits of these diverse workforces. And today, I can say that every single diamond mining company that we know is actively working and focused on increasing the representation of women in its workforce. And it's led to the introduction of so many gender-inclusive recruitment practices, workplace conditions, et cetera, in the industry. But women are still only representing around 16% of the mining sector globally. And so it's clear that a step change is needed in order to meet the ambitious gender parity goals across the sector and support SDG 5. Inclusive workplace practices are critical, but even for the most inclusive employer, they will struggle to increase the representation of women in their workforce if there aren't enough women entering the industry in the first place. So what we need is significant progress across the entire talent pipeline. And this starts from schools all the way through to the boardroom. And that's why through our Building Forever sustainability goals, which is essentially our sustainability strategy at De Beers, we've committed to engage 10,000 girls in STEM by 2023. We've been partnering with schools, universities, and other NGOs, including Womenge, to engage girls and young women in STEM to foster and help foster, that more diverse talent pipeline to make this a sustainable change. And at work, in the workplace, we're consistently looking at how we can attract diverse talent, including the way that we look at, small things like advertising roles or when we do interviews and who should be in that, panel. Because often, maybe interviews are set at a time where women are too busy because they have childcare requirements. And we've not really been thinking about this well, historically. So we've made some changes internally and we've seen some positive results, but we have so much work to do and so much more to understand it.
Thanks for that perspective. And of course, one of the things that I want to highlight with the panel that we have here is we have expertise with Feriel on the diamond mining side. And I'd like to turn to gold mining now with Diana. How does sbga support women in the Asm Gold sector around the world? Diana.
Thank you, Ed. The Swiss Petro Gold Association, or the Swiss Petro Gold Initiative that we run on the ground in Latin America mainly, we are working on several criteria. We have criteria on health and safety, on, human rights, on different, very, very different aspects that all together make the producer, what we say, responsible. And one of these elements is the gender equality. As Feriel said, right now, in our sector, it is a very conservative sector. So to start the work with, because really we work with the miners in accompanying them through the different criteria on how to reach these criteria. And so our work is to explain them what it consists of, start with the basics. So let's say, start from the very good old policy on gender equality, and then start building from this. And that would include work on the equal pay, equal hiring conditions, salaries, etc. And slowly we can see that the initiative is 8 years old now. We can see that today in these small mining operations that we work with, there are more and more women in specialist positions, like health and safety, mining engineers. Feriel just spoke about talents. So we can see that in Peru, the University of Mining, they start now forming these kind of specialists. So slowly, these companies start introducing women workers on absolutely equal positions. The percentage is still very little, of course, and in that terms, we still have a lot of a big avenue to go. But also we have more of a pioneer supply chains, like the gold panels in Peru, where we are extremely proud of having reached 48% of the producers of these gold women. And these are the main feeders, actually, of their families. And especially during the pandemic, we could see that if maybe in some cases the companies have been shut down, as these are individual producers, independent, self-employed producers, they could carry on their activities. And therefore, their voice actually internally within the families has been much more powerful. And there is kind of an understanding of what is the real place of women in mining.
Yeah. Thank you for that. By the way, we're loving your virtual background there. I'm assuming you're not actually at a mine site, but is that at one of your facilities that you work with in Peru or Colombia or Bolivia?
This is Peru, indeed. This is one of our mines in Peru. It is at 2,500 meters above the sea level.
Thank you. Well, we send our greetings and best wishes to all the partners that you work with there. I'd like to turn now to colored stones and colored stone mining. And of course, Cristina is the expert in that area with us today. Now, Cristina, why do you think it has taken so long for women to come to the forefront in mining, and how do we as an industry address that going forward?
Sure, thank you very much. Well, let's take a step back just to tell you a little bit about the colored gemstone sector. Unlike diamonds, it is between 80 and 90% mined by artisanal and small-scale miners. These are people using shovels and picks and human strength to dig minerals out of the ground. As you all know, in diamonds, it's flipped. About 80% of all diamonds come from larger scale mines, and about 20 come from artisanals. So in colored gems, you have this huge labor force between 80 and 90%. Who are out there working as farmers, as and kind of mixing livelihoods with mining typically. About 1/3 of those are women, and that's been that way for a while. So women have been in the sector for a long time. Why are they coming to the forefront now? Well, we have better research. That's the first thing. You wouldn't believe how many people, when I'm in a place, tell me that women don't mine here. And I turn to them, I'm like, well, it's actually well researched that women are about 20 to 30% in this particular country. And then we have this parade of women coming in who need miners. So first, I think acknowledging that women indeed do mine. They tend to mine in the lower, the places where the overburden is more shallow. Or they're in processing roles, or they work in groups and they dig together. But I think the first reason is data, and we're getting better at asking about women, first of all, asking to meet women miners. That's actually the very first question anybody should ask. Where are the ladies? And then usually the response is, oh, you want to meet women miners? Let's go. And then we cross a river, and then there's thousands of them. But if you didn't ask that question, you wouldn't have found them. And then you wouldn't know or acknowledge they exist. I think the other part of your question, Ed, is, women in mining encourage other women in mining. So when you start recognizing them, when you start talking to them, you start creating role models for others. And so I think I think this sector will just continue to have more women in it. Even in the mining pits. So they've been there all along. We just know more about them now.
Thank you, Cristina. I'd like to talk now a little bit about the two sectors of mining that drive products through to the jewelry industry. One, of course, is ASM, artisanal and small-scale mining that we've talked about, but also large-scale mining, or LSM, as some people describe it as. And Feriel, of course, you wear both hats through De Beers, but also through the Gem Fair project that De Beers has been piloting. So with that insight into both the large scale and also the artisanal diamond mining sectors, are there challenges faced by women in each, and are they different, or are there any common denominators between the two?
Thanks, Ed, and thanks for calling me an expert in ASM. I have to say, what I know from the artisanal mining sector is limited to our learnings from being on the ground in Gem Fair in Sierra Leone.
Feriel, could we just ask you to speak up a little bit? It's a bit difficult to hear you from where I'm sitting.
Sure, no problem. So, Ed, do you hear me better now?
I think that's great. If you just speak up a little bit, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. So I was just saying, my expertise in artisanal mining is limited to Sierra Leone through our project in Gem Fair. And for those that don't know, we've been working with artisanal miners in Sierra Leone, in the Kono area, that are focused on diamond mining, working with them in partnership to raise standards so that the international market could accept and be open to artisanally mined goods, rather than, often confusing them with conflict diamonds or irresponsible sourcing, or whatever the perception may be. So what we've seen in the diamond mines in the Kono area is that the similarity is, women remain underrepresented in both artisanal and large-scale diamond mining sectors. And the specific challenges, however, that they face are actually quite different due to the sectors themselves being very different. So as I mentioned, GEMFA is operating in Sierra Leone, and the experience there is, as is the case, I guess, in many other artisanal diamond mining countries, women aren't generally involved in the digging or the manual labor with artisanal diamond mining. However, they do work as the license holders, the financiers and supporters within the sector. What we have seen in the artisanal sector in the same area is that women are much more involved in artisanal gold mining. And we believe it's because it provides them with a far more reliable source of income. You know, they're not treasure hunters. They're really thinking about how they're going to, you know, provide food and healthcare to their family. And gold is found every single day. Whereas diamonds, you know, you can find a diamond gravel that's rich in diamonds and one that is extremely low in diamonds, meaning you may go for months without finding a diamond. So we've really looked at this, but one area that we've seen, because mining involves so much, it's not just digging or prospecting or sorting, also reclamation is part of mining. So what we've found in this area where gender equality can play a significant role is in a recently launched mine site reclamation pilot, where we're working with our artisanal mining partners to reclaim these legacy diamond mining areas. And after the land is reclaimed, the members of the community, especially women, are carrying out the cultivation. We support them through salaries for the farmers, and the cultivation activities are even though in early stages, but we're really excited about the prospect of this initiative not only providing another livelihood for men and women in the local community, but also supporting food security for the community. And we've seen in Sierra Leone, you know, the pandemic, even though COVID didn't hit the people of Sierra Leone so as hard as many other countries, the fact that borders were shut, food security became an extremely important issue, because food prices, when borders shut, you know, increase dramatically. So you're lacking in work, you're lacking in income, and your bag of rice is going up by 400%. Food security becomes really important, and it doesn't need to be separate from like the mining process, and it can be linked to reclamation. So it's really about finding opportunities for both the men and the women in the artisanal mining sector to create livelihood opportunities and protect and safeguard sustainable change in the sector.
Thank you, Feriel. Could I possibly ask if it's possible to have on the screens here I have on stage images of all of the panelists, because one of the things I would like to encourage all of you is if you have anything to add to what's being said, please feel free to join in at any time. But if I can turn to you, Diana, to add on that, talking about the differences between ASM and large-scale mining. You're principally working with artisanal small-scale gold miners in Peru, Bolivia, and Colombia, Diana. So what do you find have been the challenges for reaching gender equality, and where do you see the opportunities going forward?
Thank you. I think the biggest challenge really, and I think all the speakers who will agree on that, is the prejudices about women in mining. I have been several times to the producing countries with which we work with, and in several places we could see women not even allowed entering the mine, because it is bad luck, because the vein will disappear, and that sort of cultural prejudices are strong, holding strong, you know. So and I think working to change that mentality, it is very hard, and that also shows you the gap that we have to overcome. Also, in artisanal small-scale gold mining, we can see all sort of informality. This is also where the majority of informal mining happens, and therefore we also see women as a more vulnerable part of these supply chains, or they are dependent. Maybe they are not necessarily employed by these artisanal miners, but they work in the surrounding areas, in food supply or other sort of services. And there also we can see the vulnerability of these women. Yeah, and then. But at the same time, as the example I mentioned in Colombia with the women diggers, there we have an extremely good example, and we really want to further grow these kind of pilot projects, where we started with 500 gold panners in Colombia. Now we have grown the value chain up to 1,300. And the objective is to grow this to 2,000 suppliers, and where, as I mentioned earlier, 48% are women. And so it's extremely nice result, and we want to further continue on that example, because in Colombia, for example, these kind of gold producers, artisanal panners, they represent, there is more 500,000 of these kind of producers in Colombia, and the proportion is more or less the same. So it's about 250,000 women in mining who can potentially also access the formal markets. Cristina, you had something.
Yes, I just wanted to add to Diana's point. I think sometimes we don't always recognize our own biases and our own blindness. So one thing that we do at PACT is we always take a look at the baseline. What does the research say on women's participation? And make sure that that at least matches who's in the room in our workshops. So if it's 20% women or 30% or 50%, I want to make sure my workshop has that many women. And if they're not there, the next step is to ask the question why, and how can you do better next time? Is it a matter of location? Is it a matter of them not feeling like they can be there because they're women? Is it a matter of the men needing to be enlightened? Is it other reasons? But kind of asking yourself, how can you do better, and how can you achieve that balance to at least reach that baseline? I think the other thing with these workshops is that sometimes women need their own workshop to feel comfortable and train to where they are in their mining journey. If you don't have enough money to have a separate workshop for women, put them in the front row. That's one way. And then train your facilitator to ask, okay, I've heard from men already. The next question has to come from the lady, and we're going to wait until we hear one. Those kind of things. So there's lots of ways, whether you have the funds to train separately. I speak from a nonprofit perspective, so a lot of my thinking is about available funds. But I think sometimes we are gender blind and we just have a workshop and don't think about who's there and why. So that's one way I think we can overcome some of the discrimination at different levels, including our own.
Well, thank you for bringing that in, Cristina. And I did want to ask you, because, as much as possible, you're sitting in your offices, wherever you are, and we're here in Vicenza Oro, but we would love to bring in the voices and learn more about some of these women that you are working with around the world. And, the Moyo Gems project, and Moyo Gems, if I'm right, Moyo is Swahili for heart, which I think is a beautiful choice of name. But of course, you're working with women in a society that's particularly patriarchal, especially in Tanzania and especially in the Maasai community. So tell us a little bit about some of the women that you've been working with over the past few years on that Moyo Gems project, and some of the hidden operational challenges you've experienced. Briefly, if you can.
Yes. I think working with women in such a deep way has been very eye-opening, even for myself. In the Maasai culture, for example, women don't often go to school. And so we have a population of mixed tribes, but the Maasai are typically the ones that cannot read. And so a lot of times when we get consent, we have to talk about it and talk about it in their language, Maasai or Kiswahili. And then get their thumbprint, because they might not be able to write. So we have a little ink pad that we bring around and get their thumbprint. But sometimes it's more than that. It's really talking about it. And so one of the things that we think about a lot is our duty of care, making sure that women are not a target because of our programs. And when just as an example, we have everyone sign a form to allow for us to use their photos on our website and on our materials. But then I got the question one day, Cristina, what is the internet?
Yeah.
And so how can you possibly get consent for something that they don't know it exists? And these are very remote communities. So let's be clear, there's, Tanzanians, working on blockchain, right? We work on blockchain now, but after some iterations, and working with a tech company to actually make blockchain accessible to artisanal miners who are out in the middle of nowhere and have all these literacy challenges. Yeah. So again, some more statistics. About 60% of our miners have only gone to some primary school. Three out of 60, that was our initial class, have a bank account in their name.
Yeah. 3. Yeah.
And 3 have a smartphone. The rest have either no phone or kind of dumb phones, as we say. So I think part of it is appreciating, the context in which you're operating, but also what's possible when you really think about these things and dig in and work with the miners themselves. We started seeing that women's participation in our market days, where people sell the gems, was declining. And we thought about it and we asked, and they said that they can't afford 2 hours to go to the market day. And then it's a risk whether they're going to sell the gems or not. So we decided, let's really lean in, work with the government, and bring it to the village. And we had almost every woman enrolled in our program attend, because it was not a risk. They did not have to travel, give up 4 hours of their day, 2 hours there and 2 hours back. Yeah. So it's thinking about your duty of care. It's also thinking about do people really understand things like consent, and then also taking that extra step. So you'll notice that we never talk about incomes. Yeah. Because that's no target.
That's a very important.
Yeah,
that's a very important perspective, Cristina. Thank you for bringing that in and those stories. We've seen some of the challenges here from the panel. I'd really like to turn, Iris, we haven't forgotten about you here with me in the room. I'd really like to turn to the business case for working to support these people, some of these challenges that Cristina was talking about there so passionately. I mean, from your perspective with your members at RJC, but also outside as well, what do you see companies doing well? And what are the barriers preventing more companies taking immediate action?
Well, it's a very good question. I think I'll start with the barriers because, when I listen to Cristina's story, and it's clearly an example, for example, where government has to work closer together with the private sector to find solutions, or where you have to have a multi-stakeholder group with NGOs on site to really see what is relevant to empower those women, because we can think we have the solution, but do we really understand effectively on the ground what is required? So I believe sometimes one of the barriers is lack of real collaboration, where there's a necessity. What I think, and I think, Diana, it was something that you mentioned, that there's still a lot of unconscious bias by all of us. So let's be very clear, by all of us. So too much stereotyping. And there, I think it is critical that we have more education, because you can't change that overnight. It's great we've got this movement going on, but education will be critical to really understand, what can we do about this change in behavior, and at every level of organizations. I said it before today, we talk about transformational partnerships, so data. So I would love to hear more about that, in another panel. And I think, again, there are still a lot of common issues that we know. Violence against women is a huge barrier. And we know, for example, during COVID, that accelerated. So, how, as the private sector, can you also give that safe space? And I love this term, a safe container where women have someone to go to and where there's mentorship. But what's going well? As you know, Ed, I'm an optimist. So first of all, there's an enormous appetite by the industry. And I see a lot of leadership, and it's not just, the Beers and Alrosa and all these beautiful brands. I see many family businesses taking this topic at heart because they do care. So that's great. I think the next step is how can you really change from, saying a commitment and bringing that into action. And then action that's measurable. We see much more advocacy. Look at us here in Vicenza, and thank you again to Vicenza Oro for bringing it to the table. We need more advocacy, but we also need more advocacy from an industry as a collective with governments. Because some of these topics, like access to healthcare, living index wage, are topics that we cannot solve on our own. We need to work closely together with governments. I think what we see as what some of the companies are doing is, looking at, first of all, where are we? So they take the code of practices of the RJC, they look at, remuneration, looking at, gender, women, men, looking at access to childcare, looking at what legislation is doing and what can you do as a company to go beyond legislation. Of course, establish zero policy against all violence of work and aggression and sexual harassment, but at the same time also working on this culture of inclusion, because gender is one element. We could broaden it. And I think then a final comment I wanted to make is we are a multi-tier supply chain. So only the cascade effect will work. And, I always like the examples there of, what the Beers and Alrosa are doing, really working closely with their suppliers to understand, what can you do together. So I think these partnerships will continue to accelerate. But I am optimistic. We are moving into the right direction, but we just need to go a little bit quicker.
That's great to hear, and I think many people support you in that. And Feriel, if I can bring you in, De Beers, of course, a large business, but why is it worth focusing on these issues for large and small and medium businesses all across the supply chain?
And I'm not going to repeat what everyone said, because I completely agree with it. It's so important because morally it's the right thing to do on so many different levels. But I think when I'm speaking to external, small, large, medium businesses who are at the start of their journey and need to convince their board internally and so on and so forth, the benefits go beyond being the right thing to do. So having a greater diversity of thought and opinion has always proven to drive stronger, more innovative and adaptable businesses. This is, as Iris mentioned earlier, supported by research conducted by McKinsey and many others that show that companies at the top quartile of gender diversity are 15% more likely to have better, stronger financial returns above the national industry median. And these studies also link gender diversity to innovation. And as we know right now, if you don't innovate, you do not exist. In the next 5 years, things are moving so fast. And patents are cited to be granted to those with mixed gender teams at a 30 to 40% more often than all the other male-only teams. So frankly, this just makes common sense, business sense. When you're developing products and services, if your think tank and decision makers aren't diverse, you're risking creating a service or a product that you're going to take to market that just doesn't resonate with 50% of the demographic that you need to be engaging with, at a minimum.
I see great nods on the panel from the three of you there.
We are the most important consumers. You should not forget us.
Exactly. And, that's always been the narrative of the industry is, we're selling to women. You've got to understand what women want from the people that are making and selling their jewelry. But, of course, we're learning that it goes well beyond that. And we're learning as well recently, and I would really like to finish off quickly with some questions about the role of jewelry in messaging to the consumer about what the jewelry industry is really doing to further these goals, the SDGs. And Diana, if I turn to you first for this, where responsibly sourced gold has been talked about for some years now, and it's coming through, but still the supply is quite limited. So how do we and how do you see the role of responsibly sourced gold within the pipeline, And how do we promote that through to the consumer as being beneficial for achieving some of the Sustainable Development Goals?
I think it is really it works from both sides. It is for the producers that they want to do the better, but it's also the end consumers, for the end consumer to ask for better product. Because I think definitely the time when watch and jewelry industry or the luxury industry was looking at the qualities of the supply chain only in terms of purity and karat is definitely over. And today we look into the quality of these supply chains also from the aspect of ethics, how it has been produced ethically, in violation of human rights or gender rights or any other kind of abuses. So I think definitely what as brands or even the end consumers should understand, and we should all work on it, it's that ethics and aesthetics can go together and actually should go together. And I think the more also, it is also a self-winding mechanism, the more the end consumers will be asking for the provenance, for the quality of the supply chain in terms of ethics as well. So the more also the producers will be seeing the added value of improving their practices. And because what we have to show these producers who are often just striving to produce and do not necessarily think of improving the quality of certain working practices. Yeah. So we have to show them that by doing better, their product has an added value in the market. Excellent. And then the market mechanism just simply go on.
I see that Cristina would like to join, but can I go to Iris first?
Yeah, just a quick question on that, Diana. This morning I was at a breakfast meeting where Stephen Lucier was talking about, about purpose. And I think that's where this is also the decade of purpose. I think never there has been such an opportunity to tell the story of our jewelry by the societal impact, the positive societal impact that we have, and really evolving from the doing no harm, just the legal compliance side, to the doing good and having measurable results. So in that sense, we're on a good path.
Thank you. Cristina, you had something.
Yeah, let me give you 3 reasons why you should go responsible. First, it keeps you out of legal trouble because the EU has a couple of new laws. One came into force this year, saying that you have to do due diligence around your any product that enters the EU market. And if you haven't established basic traceability, how can you possibly do any basic due diligence? You cannot. If you have no traceability, you do not have an ethical product. Full stop. The second business case is that you can charge more. You have this due diligence wrapped around the product. You have these stories that can go with the product if you have that traceability and if you have the right partner taking the metrics. And so you can charge at the higher end of whatever band that applies to you. It can be a premium or it can be just a higher end. That's what we do at Moyo. And the third is that you can differentiate your product amongst your competitors. So
I think I expected that Cristina might disappear because she froze.
And they have a beautiful story. And you can have pictures, and you can tell the story of Salma, or you can tell the story of Eunice, and no one else can do that. But you can, because you've chosen responsibility.
Can you be quick? Thank you. We're running out of time here so that we can prepare for the next panel as well. My apologies for that. But Iris, at the end of this discussion at 4:30 here in Italy, we'll be hearing more about your gender equality report. Very briefly, if you can, what were the key findings and recommendations that have come out of that? A little bit of a sneak preview of what you'll be talking about later.
Well, I think everything that has been really shared in this panel. So, the need of consistent policies and commitments, the need for reliable data, the need to really create cultures of inclusion from the moment really, of talent attraction, but also the role of education and reskilling women to be fit for purpose and continuously being able to evolve. And also the critical importance of value chain initiatives. Happy to talk about it a little bit later.
We'll look forward to hearing more about that later. And if I can wrap up very quickly with all of you, can I ask one quick fire question to you each? What single message should retailers send to consumers about the importance and role of jewelry in promoting gender equality? If I can come to you, each of you, in no particular order, but Diana first, what one single message should retailers be putting through to consumers? Briefly, if we can.
I would say again, maybe ethics and aesthetics should go hand in hand in any piece of jewelry.
Thank you. Feriel?
It's a really good question, and there's so much to say, but if I had to pick, I'm going to pick two. First, as in the jewelry industry, you speak to the consumer through your marketing campaigns. So the first thing that I would, call to action for is to challenge gender stereotyping through your marketing campaigns. And there is so much research out there that will shock you, that we haven't had the chance to talk about today. And I'll close off by saying jewelry has always been an expression of ourselves and increasingly an expression of what we stand for, hence Stephen talking about purpose earlier this morning. And we all agree women are the primary consumer of diamonds, and therefore gender equality needs to be firmly at the top of the industry's agenda. And so much work is being done currently to change the narrative in the upstream, the mining sector. So I would encourage retailers to reach out to your supply chains, get to your miners, and learn more about what we are doing so that you can tell the story, as Cristina was mentioning, to the consumer, so that consumers can continue to feel so proud that their purchase is supporting the industry's efforts in this and many other areas that support positive change and development.
Thank you, Feriel. What a great business person. I give you one and you take two. Thank you. Cristina, same question to you, and please be brief. What one single message to consumers?
Yeah, sure. So since the 1970s, sustainability has meant both the environmental and the social. It's not just one. And so I worry that these days we're talking about carbon neutrality or net carbon footprint, but we're forgetting about the social. We're forgetting about the people behind those gems. And with the right partner and with the right practices, you can make incredible social progress. But I think it's important to keep reminding the consumer, we don't want to abandon whole communities and leave them destitute when we just think about carbon. Yep. We can actually achieve good carbon practice, plus the amazing social impact that sourcing gems produces.
Yep, great. Thank you, Cristina. And last word to Iris.
I don't think it's fair. They've all said it. I'll try. No, I think it's the same. Tell your story of purpose. Yeah. That's it. Tell the story of the people and the planet.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being brief. It's been an honor to share the stage and cyberspace with you ladies. Thank you very much indeed for your time. We welcome you to have a wonderful rest of your afternoon in Geneva, in London. Cristina, I believe you're in Toronto, where your father is receiving a special award, so our best regards to your family, and also Iris here in the room in Vicenza. Thank you. For those of you who are with us here in the room, please, we will be back in 5 minutes with the next panel, and we'll be discussing SDG 12, responsible consumption. Thank you all very much indeed. It's going to be weird, but I'll be here and be helping and move it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to Jewelry Industry Voices, organized and hosted here at Vicenza Oro by CIBJO, the World Jewelry Confederation.
We went from Milan and kept just
Welcome to Jewelry Industry Voices, the webinar series hosted by CIBJO, the World Jewelry Confederation. We look at issues of interest in the jewelry industry from the perspective of industry leaders. Thank you all for joining us here in the room today at Vicenza Oro, and thank you all of those who are joining us online today. Welcome, and we hope we find you in a fantastic mood wherever you are today in the world. This is the second of our two panel discussions focusing on meeting the challenges of the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, the United Nations framework that was established in 2015 and runs till 2030. I'm going to refer to them as the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. We are live streaming here on Vicenza Oro's website, and we are being recorded and will be viewable later on both CIBJO and Vicenza Oro's YouTube channels. I am Edward Johnson. I'm the moderator for these series of webinars. This is the start of season 3 of Jewelry Industry Voices, and we will be broadcasting monthly for the next year. Please check CIBJO social media for more information on our activities. I'm joined as my co-moderator in the wonderful hybrid or phygital world in which we live now by Jonathan Kendall, CIBJO's Executive Vice President. CIBJO, Jonathan became EVP of CIBJO in April of this year after 2 decades at De Beers, where he held a number of senior executive roles. Jonathan, good afternoon. Welcome to you from the countryside in England, I believe.
Yes, Ed, good afternoon, and thanks for the introduction.
Let me turn to the panelists first briefly. Firstly, Danielle Keller Aviram. Danielle, welcome. Danielle is a sustainable jewelry consultant and a fashion researcher, writer, and lecturer. She has been mainly researching and consulting jewelry-related organizations and businesses about the sustainable and circular approach and strategies. Good afternoon, and Shana Tova to you, Danielle. Secondly, with me here live in the room is Dr. Philipp Reisert, from the managing partner of HAFNER in Germany. Philipp joined HAFNER as the representative of the 5th generation in the business in 1993. HAFNER is a family-owned company active in precious metal refining, semi-finished products, and components for the luxury goods, technical, and dental industry. Philipp, thank you for joining me on stage.
Thank you very much for being here.
And next, we go to Rio de Janeiro. We're very international today, traveling around the world virtually. And Gabriel Andre Sauer, who's the managing director of Sauer in Brazil. Gabriel is from the 3rd generation of the Sauer family, responsible for preserving the 80-year-old Brazilian brand's DNA and also carrying it into the 21st century. Established in 1941, Sauer is one of Brazil's most prominent and distinguished jewelers. Bom dia to you, Gabriel.
Bom dia, it's a pleasure to be here, Edward.
And last but not least, Oren Schneider, who's the CEO of CIRCA, joining us from the East Coast in New York over there. CIRCA is a leading global buyer of pre-owned, high-end jewelry and watches. Oren is also the founder of Adama Partners, an operational venture firm focused on the global gem and jewelry industry. Prior to this, Mr. Schneider worked at Bain & Company, focused on private equity transactions. Oren, good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, Ed. Happy to be here. And to you and Journey, I know you're a tennis fan. Congratulations on a fantastic night last night. Beautiful.
Wasn't she fantastic? Please note, as a quick disclaimer if I can, that none of the opinions or information offered at this event constitutes any financial, legal, or official advice. CIBJO, the World Jewelry Confederation, provides a global perspective on the gem and jewelry industry. So for more precise information, we encourage you to play an active part in your local trade associations and also to seek active, relevant advice for your business. Jonathan, we're going to do this hybrid style today. I'm here on stage, you're in rural England. Can I hand over to you to lead the conversation?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ed, and for that introduction to today's second webinar. And I'm sure you'd all agree that today's topic is highly relevant to the future of the jewelry industry. Responsible consumption and production will affect all of us in both the short and the longer term. And we'll all have a part to play in this in the industry over the next decade or two. Our panel, as you heard, includes a broad range of advocates involved in the industry, and I'm sure together they will provide us with some great and valuable insights. We will be focusing on three broad topics. Firstly, how can we in the jewelry industry make a real difference? Secondly, what exactly is the circular economy, just so that we all clearly define what we mean by it. And thirdly, and finally, what communications and messages should we be using with consumers with regards to this topic? The panelists will focus on brief, insightful ideas and facts, and I encourage them all to talk whenever they wish, so that we really can have an entertaining session, one that's really valuable to all our listeners from around the world. So if everyone's happy with that, I'm going to start on our first topic now. How can we make a real difference? And I thought I'd start by asking a question to Danielle, if that's okay, Danielle. During these very difficult COVID times, and let's be honest, we've all had an incredibly difficult 18 months or so, there may have been a slight inclination for the environmental challenges to have been rather underplayed. And as it's such a critical story of our age, how do you think the jewelry industry can engage in minimizing waste all along its supply chain? Danielle.
It's quite a big question.
Yes.
So I would start by highlighting that I find the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, as a big and general framework that can then be condensed to what is relevant for the jewelry industry. It's kind of like a lighthouse, as I see it, that can guide us through some of the most biggest challenges and issues that we face in the industry. And if we take it further to this specific panel, then I think finding ways to minimize pollution and waste is a key step, addressing this Sustainable Development Goals specifically. I think in order to tackle this goal specifically, we all need to be extremely creative. I'm going to give one example that popped into my mind while we talked about these questions. It's not from the jewelry industry, but there is a really interesting denim production site in Vietnam that they understood that a big part of their waste is coming from wastewater, which is also a big issue in the jewelry industry. So when they produce products, in this case denim, they have a lot of sludge. And in collaboration with a nearby factory, they transform this sludge into bricks that can then build affordable homes for local communities. So in the end, they minimize their own waste, which is a great also financial benefit for their own production site, while also creating positive impact for their community that surrounds the factory. So I think this is how we should perceive the SDGs and how we should look about sustainability in general as a motivation to create economical benefits, but also much broader benefits.
Yes, thank you, Danielle. I think that's an absolutely critical point. And I think the other thing that you're emphasizing there is that there are so many different ways that we can make a difference. You know, everything we do, I suppose virtually 24 hours a day, there are ways in the business world and in our personal life that we can make a fundamental difference. Is that true? And do you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think, especially when we're talking about jewelry, I think this should create a positive impact because this is a product that is associated with a lot of happiness in a broader scope.
Totally agree. So thanks, Danielle. I mean, now Philipp is, I think, on stage, as we heard. Philipp, do you believe the jewelry industry can make a real difference in terms of carbon footprint across the globe? And how much can we really achieve? You know, how big an industry are we to impact on it?
Yes, definitely. Definitely the jewelry industry can make a difference. Let me first thank CIBJO and Mr. Cavalieri for the possibility for me being here. Let's talk about the difference the jewelry industry can make. And I start with a figure. Gold mining in the year 2018 emitted 126 million tons of CO2. That's about 20% of the whole that's 20% of whole of Germany. So just think about that. What it means to the planet, to our most challenging times we have concerning climate change. And then think about just the pure figure of gold being extracted. And of course, we have the mines, and you need about a ton to produce 3, 4, 5 grams of the metal. And then you can understand why gold extraction is one of the most CO2 intensive industries in the world. To take 1 kilo or to produce 1 kilo of gold, you emit about 30 tons of CO2. So these are huge numbers, and in the decision of producing, in the decision of recycling and also recycling, we'll come to that later on, the jewelry industry can make a difference.
Yes, thank you, Philipp. I mean, those statistics are very significant. And I think the message to all of us is we have a lot to do, and we can seriously play our part. I mean, there is an obvious fact there. To imagine it's 20% of German CO2 emissions is remarkable, really. So yeah, a really salient point for us all to take on board. Let's move to Gabriel. Do you see other ways in the jewelry industry that how we can reduce our emissions? And what are you up to in your business in terms of focusing on this issue?
You know, Jonathan, I think like my grandfather, he had a really intense connection with gemstones. He used to say that, you know, billions of years, you know, to information, they used to carry the spirit of the Mother Earth. And, you know, nature is our most expensive jeweler. So I think, especially as Brazilians, we must set an example, having the Amazon forest. And as was mentioned, you know, there's a lot of illegal extraction of gold here, right? So it's responsible for a lot of the emissions. So we made a commitment here at Sauer to only use recycled gold, a commitment that we held for 5 years. And additionally, we thought that we could go further. So we partnered up with an NGO called Asm. They're responsible for recuperating degraded soil in the Amazon. And for every jewelry we sell, we plant 1 native tree in the Amazon and 1 coffee seeding. And it's interesting because people say, why a coffee seeding? Because you can't not only plant the forests again, you need to make an economic alternative for the local communities not to deforest again. So we're making this commitment. We already planted more than 5,000 trees in the Utama Reserve in the Amazon forest. So it's, you know, it's something that in this year that we are celebrating our 80th anniversary, we're really proud to be setting this path.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that's absolutely fantastic. And, you know, for every business that can make a difference such as that, I mean, I think the thing is that business, and especially the jewelry industry, but the business has to take such fundamental opportunities because you can't just rely on governments. I mean, we know that. So I think what you're explaining you're doing over there is just superb. And, you know, we all read internationally about the Amazon. I don't think there can be anyone that isn't scared by the fact that deforestation will have a massive impact on all of us anywhere in the planet. It really doesn't matter, even though it's obviously very close to home for you. So, I mean, I think that's just wonderful. And I think those are the sort of things we as an industry need to look to try and do more and more of. So well done and congratulations, really. Fantastic job. Oren, look, you run a fascinating business, different in many respects from the others on the call here. What can you tell us about CIRCA to start? Because obviously not everyone will know about it. And have you seen differences in your business and seen it grow in the last sort of 18 months with the challenges that are you know, affecting the whole industry? And really, where do you see that going? You know, how are you going to make a difference to the consumer through your business model?
These are many questions, good ones. Johnny, first, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to take part in this panel alongside such esteemed speakers, and I'll try to keep it brief. CIRCA is a pre-owned luxury jewelry specialist. We buy high-end jewelry, diamonds, and watches, tens of thousands of pieces every year directly from consumers, and we distribute the product to consumers and to the jewelry trade using proprietary auction, tender, and e-commerce platforms. As you know, this market is vast and fast-growing, estimated at about $25 billion recently by a large consultancy. Our clientele is very loyal. About 50% of our purchases come from repeats and referrals. People are very passionate about this. Maybe in a word, what differentiates us, it's really category expertise. Unlike many generalist resale platforms, we are a true jeweler. We employ world-class experts in fine jewelry and watches. On any given day, we see important 10-carat diamonds that may require recutting and recertification, in rare Cartier pieces from the 1950s and one-of-a-kind Rolex and tons of gold. It requires a lot of expertise to manage that supply chain. Another point is technology and data mining capabilities. We operate a proprietary back-end system that allows us to manage interactions with sellers globally, utilizing algorithmic pricing to allow us to identify and value pieces across categories of product. And lastly, on the differentiation, we developed a bricks and mortar proposition that allows us to purchase directly from consumers face-to-face in soon to be 19 global locations, as well as over video, email, and text. You mentioned growth. We plan to open dozens more physical locations globally in the next decade and enhance our distribution capabilities. COVID, you talked about the 18 painful months. The last year and a half has been hard for everyone. Many lives lost, human suffering, grave damage to businesses, obviously. In our business on the supply side, in fact, we've been witnessing a significant increase in the number of owners who are looking to sell their product. The engagement levels with advertisements and with communications and messages has been significant. And in my opinion, what really drives that is that the pandemic expedited and de-assetizing phase due to changing priorities for many, many people around the world. I personally spoke to a client, a lovely woman who brought dozens of really unique and special pieces produced by a very famous French maison. And she said they just don't work well with her Lululemon. I mean, she just looks at life very, very differently. So you see that happening across the board. On the demand side, picture is similar. Overall rising tides for luxury consumption. The affluent have more discretionary income to spend, they travel less, they buy more product. But it also coincides with the climate scare that we're unfortunately seeing, and it's not going away, and people do make the connection to responsible consumption. And more people had the time to educate themselves during the pandemic on the true impact of consuming pre-owned, and we see a lot of excitement in that area of the business.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I mean, I think it's reassuring that you are seeing consumers considering their purchase habits and really making that conscientious decision. And I think as an industry, as long as we overall rise to that, we'll be fine. But it is very important we all play our part. So it's good to know. Thank you. So look, the second area we're going to cover is, and I'm going at some speed, so I apologize, but we need to keep the ball rolling. So the second area we're going to cover is defining what the circular economy actually is. And I don't want to put anyone out, but I think I'll start again with Danielle, because she was a good starter on the first topic. So Danielle, can you give us a general definition of the principles of the circular economy and how they relate in your mind to the jewelry industry, please?
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Yeah, so I think like the general concept of circular economy is not associated with jewelry. It's actually associated with any industry. And if we take it in contradictory to the linear system that we are now seeing all around the world in any product and industry range, we are taking natural resources, in our case, gold and other precious minerals. We're turning them into products that are designed and designated to end their lives in a waste stream. So they, in our case, maybe not end in landfill, but usually just sit in drawers all around the world and not being used. And we keep on mining new minerals. Whereas in the circular economy, we're talking about ongoing and never-ending loops and flows of reuse, repair, recycle, or any other RE that you can think of resources. And basically, the main principles, I would say, are eliminating waste and pollution, which I mentioned in the previous question. Thinking about building and developing systems for ongoing materials and products flows and use. So either creating products that are made from one material, so monomaterials that then could be easily repaired or recycled or reused to create the next product, or developing products that are easily separated between bio materials and technical materials. And just a general briefing of what does it mean. Biomaterials is anything that can degrade in nature naturally. So cotton, banana, and tech materials is anything that cannot decay in nature. So we need to repair and recycle it ongoing. So our industry is only based on tech materials. So these are things that can't just biodegrade back into nature. Yeah. All of this should be done using renewable resources for infrastructure, and thinking about regenerating natural systems and habitats. So we need to, in the end, create as less impact on the natural environment around us.
Jonathan,
I hope it was brief enough.
Yeah, no, that was very clear and
Jonathan, can I bring it back into the room here, just to interrupt? Danielle, you mentioned recycling and how important that is. Philipp, can I bring you in here? What is the relevance of recycled materials in the supply chain for precious metals?
I mean, for a gold guy like me, it's a home run to talk about circular economy, because the 200,000 tons of gold, which since 2,500 years were mined by human mankind, they're still 90% overground, and we know where it is. So we have a recycling quota of 90%. And Gabriel, I congratulate you to the decision to buy only recycled gold, because we have now the big advantage, and I come back what I said in the beginning, that recycled gold has it's CO2 or a carbon footprint which is 1,000 times less than mined gold. So when you think responsible, you have to think in the circular economy term. And of course, the best thing is you buy a used piece of jewelry, of course. I would agree there, but if it's not sold, then eventually we can buy it, our company can buy it. And we are a company which produces already with a zero footprint, meaning our gold has a no emission at all, no CO2 emission. And what I said before, you can see this is an advantage. And this can be transported to our customer and to the consumer.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Philipp, and congratulations on that. Gabriel, just for the Brazilian industry, what else is going on in the broader jewelry industry in Brazil with regards to the circular economy? Do you see a range of good opportunities or activities already happening from other players?
Yes, certainly. First of all, I think that everything we're talking and discussing here is something that our clients they expect from us. If we're not doing this in the next generation, they're simply not going to buy from you. So we're doing our obligation as businessmen, to get in the right trend, right? So here in Brazil, Brazilians are really heavy internet users, e-commerce, one of the main populations in social media, and there are a lot of resale going on in terms of websites and Instagram accounts. People are reselling everything. So there's a huge market in the jewelry sector. There's a lot of jewelers from every different segment that they receive gold in exchange for store credit, right? We had a lot of concerns. We're doing this at Sauer because we thought that since we are more at the high end part of the segment, we thought this would devaluate and would take out the enchantment of our clients, maybe attract a wrong crowd. So we decided to launch this year a campaign called Reset, which we gave the opportunity only to our client base. So we maintain the exclusivity of the experience, right? Only to our client base. And we paid a 20% bonus on the quotation of the gold of the day in credit. So we gave a clear message to our clients and they loved it. And it was a huge success. So I think, we're going to repeat this for many years because it was a big hit here.
Can I interrupt? What did you do with the gold or with the pieces you bought?
We bought the pieces and we sent to a company that is specialized in refining the gold, okay, right? And they returned the gold for us. Right. So we don't do this process, right? So we have this partner that we finish the process, right?
Sure. Thanks.
As the refiner in the room, Philipp, how does that sound to you?
That sounds good.
Surprise, surprise.
I need your telephone number.
Sure.
But obviously that's a great example. I mean, Gabriel, other people in the industry in Brazil, other jewelry companies and things, are they moving more and more into this field, do you think?
No, we were one of the last ones to adapt this kind of initiative because we had concerns, so we only do this to our clients, as I mentioned, but you have some other jewelers that anyone can get in the store and come up, and of course they're going to test the metal, right? And but it's something that it's happening here for many years.
Okay. Are there any others sort of doing the sort of work that you're doing in saving the Amazon or anything similar? I mean, or are you quite unique today in the jewelry industry in that respect?
No, I think regarding the Amazon, I think we were the first ones to make a partnership in this matter. But IDESAN, which is this NGO, they are specializing in carbon neutral certificates. And they have partnership with other brands, not from the jewelry industry, but from fashion industries and you know, all types of other industries that they do a similar thing that we are doing.
Okay, good, good. Okay, I mean, has anyone else got anything they'd like to say more about, you know, the definition of the circular economy before we move on to the third area we're going to talk about? Oren, is there anything else from your side? I mean, you're very much in your business, you know, literally using things second, third, fourth time. Anything more from you? I mean, do you see it growing?
Absolutely, Johnny. I mean, it's obviously from a consumer standpoint, and reiterating some of the points that Gabriel made, it's still in its infancy. I think we're just seeing really early stages of consumer recognition of impact, importance, and scale and scope of what is being discussed now. Specifically, and this is, I think, more linked to the next topic you're going to touch, most of the buying that we're doing from consumers happens from older generations that are relatively less connected to these messages, but I think that they're catching up really, really fast. And the environmental aspect is still not yet a major driver for participation in pre-owned trading, but I definitely see it as the future. And we're sort of definitely sitting down using whiteboards and trying to draft messages and communications that would encourage more participants in the pre-owned economy, more driven by environmental purpose.
Yeah, no, I think that's...
We've seen that, if I can bring in, because we've got a voice that has, you know, a lot of experience in the European jewelry industry here. And so what are you hearing, Philipp, from your clients along this in terms of demand for businesses that are following this route?
I think we are touching this in a second. It's a question of quantification. At the moment, I think when people talk about doing good, it's very opaque, and it's a question of marketing and what the customers, even the big customers, and they slowly start understanding it. There is a lot of work involved in this because it's a work of quantification. And it's not only a marketing bubble. It is hard work to document energy streams, to document other KPIs, and I think that's the key to transport it to the outside world. And once it's coming from the consumer and the pressure comes from the consumer, I think then the whole supply chain will follow.
Yeah.
Back to you, Johnny.
Philipp, that was a good answer to the final question I was going to ask you about messaging to the consumer.
Johnny, Danielle would like to add something.
Oh, fine. Come on, Danielle.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to highlight that I think what Gabriel mentioned about them perceiving the materials as precious and giving their customers even bonuses is a super important thing to focus if we want to create a circular economy for our industry, because this emphasizes on us as an industry seeing the preciousness of the materials. So in fact, that they are used doesn't mean that their value or quality decreases. Actually, when we are talking about precious minerals, their value is not going to decrease ever. You know, gold that has been used in ancient Egypt has the same value as gold that is mined yesterday. And I think putting incentives to convince consumers to buy reused or recycled gold, or buying from them used gold, is sending a clear message that used gold is not really used. You know, it's as good as new. And I think it's a really key thing to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, interestingly, we are quite regularly here talking about gold, but let's be honest, all materials in jewellery are reusable. I mean, everything. And I think that's part of the wonderful nature of our industry. We actually can adapt to the new world in a far easier way than other industries, because I don't know anything in a piece of jewellery that can't really somehow be reused. Oh,
sure.
maybe I'm wrong because I see Gabriel putting his hand up. Gabriel.
No, I just wanted to add, like, especially when you're talking about high-end jewelry, it's something that you pass on for generations, right? And we have a lot of clients that look from us. They receive this piece from their grandmother, and they want to, you know, rearrange it, make it new. Yeah. So we receive that piece and we make a new design using the same stones and everything. So this is something that happens naturally in the high-end industry.
And I think, to be honest, Gabriel, that's a really important point because, you know, often things trickle down from the top end of the industry anyway. And I believe what you're saying is something that needs to be broadened into the whole industry over time. I mean, there's no doubt it needs to be possible for consumers to work out ways to, you know, if they see the opportunity to hold on to an inherited piece of jewelry, but they want to modernize it, they want to change it. There needs to be an industry that does that without it being very difficult. And also without, you know, some of the concerns that consumers clearly have in terms of trust of handing pieces of jewelry over to someone to rebuild and remake and everything. So I think as an industry, we have a lot to do there, but it's all about trickling down from the top and then you know, broadening that across the whole industry.
But Oren, you have something to add.
Yeah, and I'm joining everyone's sort of perspectives, and I agree with everything that was said. There is a real environmental benefit, a true one, in selling the millions of unused pieces in drawers and safes around the world. And at some point, this will be communicated in a clear way. It hasn't so far. There's still, again, it's really early stages. There are competing business considerations and interests here, obviously and naturally. But this will be communicated to consumers, and more consumers will start participating. What we've seen and what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis are really scratching the iceberg in terms of the pieces that are floating back. I believe that we're seeing less than 1% of the installed ownership base every year that's coming back for reselling. There's still 99% that is not showing up.
But Philipp, yes, even if we have to melt them down, the footprint is considerably less than if you buy with mined gold. So I think that's another line of communication to the manufacturers or to the brands to use the recycled gold and to also promote that. And to say, because some of them, I know that there is the question of recycled means it's not you know, the same quality and it's not fresh or it's not kind of natural. I think it's the other way around. I mean, what's good for the planet is recycled gold. So we are promoting that, and we are motivating our customers to close the loop and to identify the whole supply chain in terms of a recycled footprint.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we mustn't forget that, you know, if you take diamonds as an example, you know, diamonds can be recut into modern cuts that are totally acceptable to today's consumer. So although technology has changed diamond cutting and polishing over the last 5-10 decades, it doesn't matter. You can certainly do things with older cut diamonds and improve them. So there's huge opportunity there.
By the way, Johnny, you mentioned diamonds. The demand we're seeing for old European cuts and old mine cuts is just mind-boggling. We used to recut them for triple X's just because this is what the market demands. But as consumers really understand the value and uniqueness and rarity of these old diamonds, we're actually losing value by recutting them. So we're distributing them as old Europeans.
It's good to hear, and it ties in with this whole theme we know from the millennials and Gen Zs of authenticity. I mean, it's a very strong theme in their thinking. They want authentic products, so it ties in. It's perfect news, to be honest.
Can I make one more comment?
Please.
It's concerning the metrics. I think in the 5-6 years ago we were talking about OECD and we were talking transparency and it was about human rights and ethical dimensions. It's very difficult to measure those because wherever you are in different places in the world and you have different measurements. The good thing about now the 17 SDG goals is that we are working on measuring those. And when you measure, you can you can measure an achievement in reaching the goal, and you can also compare. You can compare on a global basis, and I think that's the strength of these goals. And when we talk about CO2 footprint, an example is, for example, milk. I don't know, most of the people know Oatly as a substitute to the normal cow milk, and Oatly makes on their packaging, they mention the footprint of their product, and they compare it then, of course, with the normal milk. So consumers can have a choice if they decide for the more climate-friendly product, or if they decide for the not so climate-friendly product. And I think we have to come to that too. So at the end, if I buy a watch, I want to know what kind of footprint is behind that watch. And I know that the major brands are working on that, but I guess it's going to proliferate into the whole luxury goods industry, that we, as a forerunner of this, we can make a difference there.
Yeah, totally agree, Philipp, and your point is very well made. I mean, it sort of ties in with our last area, which is messaging to consumers. And as you're saying, Philipp, you need to be able to refer to facts and honesty rather than bluff. And, we have seen lots of bluff in the green category, I think, in the last decade. And I think many of us have been very frustrated with that. But as you say, Philipp, it takes a lot of hard work to measure your impact. And we've done a lot of that work in CIBJO, interestingly, and we've got members involved in measuring their footprint because over the last 5-8 years, we knew it was always going to be a challenge. So, very important point.
Johnny, just before you ask the next questions on this, I learnt a new term, sustainababble. Basically, people who talk about sustainability by babbling along without any real action. Sustainababble, just Google it. Carry on.
Oh, well, there you go. That's very useful for our notes from today. But let's move on then. So messaging to consumers. Danielle, a question for you again. Words matter. There's absolutely no doubt. Yeah, language, words, terminology matter. And, if we're talking about recycled, reused, repurposed, who do you think in the industry should set those sort of standards of usage? And, how important is that, frankly?
I think it's extremely important when we're communicating with consumers. As Philipp mentioned, Oatly, I think one of the biggest achievements in their CO2 measuring and comparing is that it's authentic and it's honest. And they're not trying to say we don't have a footprint. They are putting facts and figures, and with this you can't really argue, and then as a consumer you have the choice. So I think as an industry it's actually our responsibility to be authentic and honest about the efforts that we are doing, even if they're not perfect. I don't think perfect exists, especially in the sustainability path, because we have a long way ahead to go. And I think a lot of the words are now actually really vague, and it's really hard to know what is sustainability means, what is ecological, what is environmental. It's all kind of like really vague words. And I think when we will define them as an industry, we would gain more consumers' trust. And I think it would be easier for people to buy our products and to invest their money in what we are offering when they would actually know precisely what they are getting in return. And I think it's our industry's responsibility to define them. And in my imagination, I see a really diverse group of people from different places around the world, speaking different languages, different ages, taking different roles in the industry, trying to define what repurposed mineral mean. So it would be easier afterwards for us in an industry to mark what a repurposed mineral means on our product. So I think this should be representing the industry, which is quite diverse and colorful.
Yeah, I think we've definitely, it's priority, isn't it, that we actually find a way of setting those definitions within the industry, and something that we, certainly within CIBJO, we're aware of, and we've started some quite intense discussions about it. But it does have to be a global impact and a global agreement. But it's something we've all got to work on in the industry in the coming months. And I don't think it's years. If you leave it too long, messiness gets very messy, and that's always a problem. So
and I think also starting from some words, and then probably this would evolve, and not aiming for the peak or the summit.
Yeah, take time. No, absolutely. Thank you. Gabriel, how do you think we can engage in our customers on this whole sort of circular economy? How should we be talking to them about it at a retail level?
I think you have to bring them to be part of the story, right? I think this is what here at Sauer we were able to achieve. So every time they purchase a jewelry, they receive an email telling exactly where the tree is going to be planted. So, this makes them have a relationship with the purpose of the company, right?
Yeah.
And once you also give them opportunity to give their gold and receive bonus, it's an intense relationship, right? So I think the message is it's not a main message of the company. Of course, our main message is the whole enchantment of the jewelry, of the collections, and the whole purpose, but once people dig in and take a deep look at your company, they want to know what you're doing. So I think to bring your client base with you to help you tell the story, I think this is the way we should focus.
Thank you. Yeah, no, you're spot on. Great answer, and obviously the way you live. And I think that's part of the message here, isn't it? We all have to live by what we believe. And one of the dangers is too much talk and not enough action. And the whole industry's got to act. This is critical. I think really, I'm looking at the time, we've got just a few minutes left. We've got about 7 minutes left. So I think I'm just going to move on to one last question.
Johnny, can I jump in? Just thinking, Oren, I want to go back to you about how, you were talking about the difficulties of persuading some groups of consumers to actually part with their objects of beauty and value and actually contribute to the circular economy. And we talked about that earlier in the week, about the difficulty there with, we sell the product an emotion, and then they buy it and they stick it in the back of a safe. It still has emotion attached to it, but it has a real opportunity to do good by somebody else purchasing it. How do we overcome that? Because we talk about emotional value in jewelry, and that's possibly what's stopping some of those, shall we say, consumers in Florida, to stopping them from contributing to the circular economy. How can you at CIRCA be part of that?
I think that's exactly what the team around the table is discussing. Obviously, emotional relevance is at the heart of jewelry retail messaging. We're all about storytelling. And fighting climate change is a true purpose. This is as emotionally relevant a purpose as I can think of. And therefore, we have a great opportunity to promote social causes such as climate change through jewelry. And I think you're starting to see these things take place. And I was so happy to hear Gabriel's discussion on what they're doing successfully in Brazil. We know of other retailers globally that are doing exactly the same. And these messages resonate. Our typical or average seller is a 65-year-old, very affluent female. And in the past, this subject has not been on their radar, but today it is. And we're starting to craft our messages in the future to be multi-generational and speak a very similar purpose language to all.
It's actually, I have a similar story about mobile telephones or smartphones. We try, and in Germany, the industry association tries to motivate that smartphones are returned to the industry. But if I look around and if I ask you, do you all give away your smartphone, or do you still have the smartphones of the last 15 years in your cupboard? because you have some kind of emotional kind of connection to it, don't keep it. Give it away to somebody, because it includes, or there are valuable material in it which can be recycled and which can be made to a new wedding band.
It's a very good point. We live our lives according to these principles. I don't know if we all know in the room and watching online that all the gold medals at the Tokyo Olympics that were awarded this summer, they were all made from recycled gold that was from mobile phones that had been collected and donated over years before. So the only gold that was used was recycled from old tech at the Olympics.
I can add, we already melted down an Olympic medal, gold medal from the past, that I won't tell which was the athlete.
Okay. Keep some secrets.
Yes, yeah. He really needed the money, I guess.
Johnny, back to you.
Good. Well, look, I think we're really tight on time. So just one last question for each of you. If you were asked to, what one single message should retailers send to consumers about the role of jewellery in fighting climate change? Very quick answer. What should retailers be saying to consumers as they walk through the door? In the ideal world. So let's start, Gabriel, with you.
I would say that the environment is our most valuable jewel. So we must set an example and protect the environment.
Excellent one-liner. Philipp?
Yes, I think I would say you can make a difference if you consciously buy.
Danielle?
I would say be authentic and honest about the positive things you do.
And Oren?
I'm obviously taking a more commercial stance here. You care about global warming, you don't know what to do about it. Here's a very easy way to move from talking to doing. Sell your old unused jewelry and buy pre-owned recyclable product.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you, everyone. I think the panelists have been fantastic today, to be honest. Great session. I think the message is very clear for all of us, isn't it? We've all got to act. We've all got to change the way we live, change the way our industry works, and we've all got a very significant part to play in that. So I think excellent inputs, excellent insights, and thank you to each and every one of you on the panel. I think that's really all we've got time to say. There's 1 minute to go. I think also we should say to everyone, look, it's been a very tough 18, 24 months. We as a group of industry people wish everyone listening from all parts of the world a good rest of the year, a good season. Let's hope we have strong seasonal sales, and also a positive and healthy 2022. We wish you all well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Johnny. And just to wrap up from my side, I should really have calculated the CO2 emissions that we've saved by having 4 of you in your respective countries not traveling here to Vicenza and just having 2 of us on stage. If I knew the answer, I would announce it here. I didn't do my KPIs in this case, Philipp. As you said, that's what we should do.
But I didn't come by bike.
You didn't come by bike, no, and I didn't swim either. So, but nonetheless, we all try to do our bit, and I think the message is clear to everybody in the room and all of you watching online. The jewelry industry has a tremendous opportunity here to be part of really making a difference with one of the biggest challenges the world is facing right now, the climate emergency. So we encourage you to research and be part of that. Thank you very much to everybody for being part of this event over the past 2 hours. We're going to hand over now to RJC, who are launching their gender equality report. But just before we do, I would like to thank all of the sponsors for season 3 of Jewelry Industry Voices, that being the Natural Diamond Council, Platinum Guild International, Uni Diamonds, and the Paspali Pearling Company. Please follow CIBJO, the World Jewelry Confederation, on social media to follow our monthly webinar series. And finally, thank you so much to IEG, Vincenzo Oro, Marco, and his team for hosting us here today. Philipp, thank you for braving it with me on stage here. And Johnny, Oren, Gabriel and Danielle, we wish you a very wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for spending time with us today. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
everyone, and thank you again for staying after already a couple of hours on the sustainability agenda. And let's just quickly recapitulate, because today we spoke about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, about the 2030 agenda, and the importance of the industry to really drive that agenda forward, and in particularly SDG 5. And that's a topic, I think, very close to our heart, because we know that the 17 SDGs were asking, leave no one behind, and especially 50% of the people on this planet, women. And like I said before, when women thrive, communities thrive. And so it is an important milestone today, and I'm personally very grateful that I'm here together with Dr. Gaetano Cavalieri, President of CIBJO, and Emily van Landegem, who has been an intern at RJC and who has been instrumental in leading a project very close to my heart, which was our first launch of the report on SDG 5. And maybe just before I go into a little bit how the report came to the table and who participated and what are some of the results, I think I would love to hear your thoughts, Gaetano, why from day one you were very supportive to work on this report in collaboration with BSR.
Thank you very much, Iris, and congratulations to RJC, even though I am here seated as an RJC board member, of which I am truly honored to be part of since the very beginning. My personal consideration of the activity that we in the industry, specifically CIBJO and RJC, to mention the two organizations present on the stage, but not only, but mainly us, we are focused on and committed to the SDGs. You may remember when both of us, and only us, representing the entire industry, were at the Global Compact event 2010 in New York, where the activity at that time was so sparkling, where the people there was aware what's going on, but still we start much earlier. You have chaired the Global Compact in Belgium for several years, and our focus on what then became the 17 Sustainable Development Goals in 2015 towards 2030, which is well known as 2030 Agenda, are, I believe, so detailed and focused, and certainly one of the most important goals is we don't leave anyone behind. Why? Because we are inclusive, because we understand that we live in one world, and the world is only one, and this pandemic has shown that despite every border, despite any nationality, color, skin, or continent, the virus didn't take care of anything. Means that we all are equal. And due to the fact that we all are equal, we have no other choice to defend our environment, to defend every single goal, not because one is more or less important than the others, because collectively we have to give our contribution to a better world. So eradicate poverty, just to start from the number 1 and ending to the number 17, meaning partnership, is what can I say, a street that we have to go forward, hand to hand, shoulder to shoulder, in order to reach what we have done. As RJC, we have worked, and we continue work very hard and tirelessly in order to reach what we want to reach, which is not yet there, because there is too much to do and there is a long way to go. But still, we don't give up. We go forward and we go forward to give result, tools, and instruction specifically with the educational program we have seen that we are working on in order to give not only the industry but the consumer the possibility to choose this industry better than others.
Thank you, Gaetano. And I think you touch upon two important points. First of all, we have the privilege that we're working in an industry of beauty and emotions. And several times today we heard the conversation, the consumer expects trust. When they walk into that boutique to buy something for their loved one or to buy a self-purchase, they want to understand the impact that that piece of jewelry made. And that's where we have such a huge opportunity to really contribute to the better. So, you know, why this report? Because we indeed thought the time is now. And I remember a few months ago that we were coming together with a few women, the leadership team group, and you will see all their names in the report, to say, you know, how do we start? And I called UN Women and I said, you know, is there a framework? What can we do? And they just said, start. Start to understand the conversations that matter in the industry. And that brings me to the process. Emily, who has been a champion in leading this project. Emily, can you walk us through, you know, what were the steps that Responsible Jewelry Council did in partnership with WJA, with CIBJO, with the World Diamond Council and the leadership team?
Yes, absolutely. It has been an amazing pleasure for me to be a part of this process, also an immense learning curve. But it's like you said, last year in October 2020, RJC initiated a working group with various stakeholders in the industry, very much to create a platform for engagement and collaboration, and to see how we can start forwarding the SDG 5 agenda within the industry. And one of our first things was to host a roundtable just to engage the dialogue, to get the ball rolling, and to see where we are currently at with SDG 5, where the challenges lie, and where the opportunities lie for us to move forward. And since then, we have done various workshops in collaboration with BSR. We have even hosted regional roundtables to understand opportunities and challenges within the industry, and to see what companies are currently doing to incorporate, you know, SDG 5 at the core of their corporate culture and in their impacted communities. So we have done workshops, we've done training sessions, we've done roundtables, and we've also done a diversity and inclusion survey to really see and gain a baseline understanding of where the industry is currently at. And all these things put together have led up to the creation of this report, which is a milestone in many ways because it is one of the first reports that really is the product of collective action within our industry on what the role of women are in the supply chain, what companies are currently doing, but more importantly, what companies need in terms of tools and resources to move forward. And that is very much the core of this report.
Thank you, Emily. And so maybe I can just walk you through some of the comments that came in, but also, you know, some of the conclusions, and I would say temporary conclusions, because this is a moment in time. And really the objective of this report is to understand the current status and then really accelerate effort on the ground on the learning and the education. Because that was one conclusion. Companies are at very different stages of maturity. So we have already leaders, you have starters, you have companies that have just are in the middle of the journey, and the journey is a process of continuous improvement. So we need to encourage. We should not, you know, give companies anxiety. We need to give them the tools to start the journey. So first of all, the common denominator is everyone agrees the time is now. So CEOs want change, and they see it as an economic imperative. We also see that everybody understands that human rights, and we should not forget that women's rights or human rights are a business priority. Linked to our industry, women control 96% of consumer spending, so building trust in our brands among our largest consumer base is critical. And women play essential roles in our extended value chain, where we engage them, of course, as employees, designers, retailers, and distributors. We also saw that COVID-19 has really hit women hard, and that women and girls have been especially hurt by the resulting economic and social fallout. So that's where we ask the private business to step up. So what are some steps that companies are doing, or what do they see as the necessary steps to succeed? And the one element that came is, okay, we need leaders that are courageous, resilient, and that really want to drive that change throughout the organization. We need more operationalization. In other words, we need to develop cultures in an organization where gender and diversity and inclusion is becoming the new normal. We need more partnerships, transformative partnerships that are being able, where we can show progress. So I think one of the points today in the discussions came very clear that we need metrics, reliable data. And I think that's also where the RJC steps in, that we are building data frameworks that our members can use based on international best practices. We're not reinventing the wheel. We'll give you the tools. You can opt in and start the process. So that element of data and monitoring is critical. And then, of course, the element of policy development. We saw that all over the world, there are still, in different countries, policies that are very discriminating. So how can the corporate world step up? So what are some companies, asking others to do? Well, first of all, prioritize that gender diversity is a priority. Establish goals for providing and improving gender diversity. Be sure to educate your stakeholders, organize a structural approach, and champion success. And we were talking about it today. Every small step is important. But also look at professional development. If we want to attract talent and if we want employability into the industry of women, we need to see that women advance. And in general, what we see is that, of course, we see a lot of women at retail level, but how can we bring women throughout the whole different structure of an organization in different levels of the organizational structure? So again, that needs people and professional development. We need more mentorship, flexible work environments, and then close the pay gap. So even in that basic structure, we see that still a lot of companies have not started the journey on looking at the data of gender and looking at the parameters, how you're handling that as a company. But in general, we saw an enormous appetite for companies to start the journey, but also the request for tools and education. So I kindly ask you, download the reports. In the report, you will find all different tools. You will find case studies. But more important, we will also start the journey of education. So we're going to work closely with BSR and CIBJO and our key stakeholders to start training. And I think the first dates have been set, Emily, but you can find all that information on our specific webpage on the RGC website. But I thank you very much for hanging in there on such a long day of sustainability discussions. And with that said, I would love to hear from you, Gaetano, if you have any concluding comment.
Thank you very much, Iris. I was just looking to this report that RJC has done, because we have to include, as has been everyone, even though it was supervised by you. But, looking at it is an emotion. And why is an emotion? Because especially when we talk about gender equality and we talk about we don't leave anyone behind, is something important. And I don't know if we are able to transfer and make a serious consideration on what at least we, you, myself, and all the other friends and colleagues has felt during the job that has been done in making this report a big event as it is. I think that example like this, not only reading the report, but feeling the report, which is a completely different concept, is something that is once more and again giving an example how organizations such as RJC and CIBJO and all the others, NDC, WDC and so on, are so proud to bring to the attention of the people what to do, how to do, and showing the way along the long journey that we start decades ago, and I believe is, let's say, a way of life, and is not only a simple report. So thank you very much for that.
Well, thank you, and I hope you will go through the report. Most important, because what we also try to do is all the excellent tools that other organizations have made are in the report. And I'm sure there's still, more out there, but we really try to focus and work with BSR, who are experts on gender, to kind of bring everything together. And that's the start. And now the next shift will be tools, of education to help companies really start the journey to embed it as part of their culture. So looking forward to hear your thoughts, and we welcome, of course, any feedback. And with that said, I'm just looking at time also. One of the elements that came out of the report is education, and that brings me to my next guest, and thank you very much, Emily, for joining. But may I invite Paola De Luca on stage. Paola. Because goal 17 is the goal of partnerships. And throughout the past 12 months, we've been really looking at, what do companies want? And often we had discussions with the community of designers that were saying, well, we need to understand, what does sustainability mean for us, and what can we do, and how can we have, practical information? So I would love to give the floor now to Paola to give a little bit of introduction on this work that we are going to start together in partnership with CIBJO and Paola and RJC towards the designers community.
First of all, thank you. It's an honor to be on this stage with President Gaetano Cavalieri, with Executive Director of RJC, and thank you for being associated to the presentation of SDG 5's report. So thank you very much for having me. I'd like to bring a perspective, which is, of course, the creative, but also the industry perspective from, let's say, the manufacturing and the insider. I'm a veteran in the industry, and I felt and I feel very close to, of course, to the SDGs agenda. But at the same time, my goal and really honored to be part of this project is linking the designers and the small, let's say, companies, which today they are a little bit still far from understanding and jumping on the culture. And so when I had the pleasure of being invited to be part of this project, as with the group of my team and of course RJC, we put together this program, which is really like, as a designer, when we are really, we have to create product or a manufacturer, what do we have to do? Because most of the time, companies or designers, and by designers, I mean independent designers, small brands, they struggle, honestly, to pay their bills, to survive, to go through difficulties. And as in emerging economies where there are small communities that they try to make a living, sometimes they're really far from really engaging with the SDG agendas. And so, how can we link, the high floors, the high floors with the people? And so, when we get into the people planets, it's very important to be, and then I'm going to also start saying the 5 P's, and the people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. I think that really we have to start from ground floor. So I hope I can kind of help with the project that we are starting, and basically this project, it's a design program for designers and small boutiques companies, which of course include creatives, with webinars. It's the, let's call it, is the beginning of a journey where me including, I'm learning. I think that when RGC and CIBJO is talking about measuring data and defining new metrics, I think this is in progress. I think the concept of understanding circular economy is still far, because some companies still have to understand the difference between linear economy to circular economy. So let's not take it for granted. As let's not take for granted credit from credit. I don't want to start. How much do we have? 2 minutes?
Yes, 2 minutes.
I'll be very brief, trust me. So this is so we have basically, starting from October 20th, November 3 and November 24, we'll start this program with 3 modules. One is the Vision Forward. This is the first module, will be a complementary educational course where RGC will actually also share a certificate of attendance to the design that will be part of this program. So this is the Vision Forward. The second module will be Design for the Future. Really, what does it mean, design for the future? And what are the steps, the everyday steps? And of course, last but not least, the circular vision. Now, we will be very practical in this journey, what designers will have to do to jump on the SDG agenda on a daily, let's say, basis. And hopefully, we'll start this strong movement of circular design. Today, I heard, of course, previously, colleagues and analysts were talking about reusing, rethinking, recycling, and so on. I'd like to just say this very simple line to just say, circular design is not new. It was before planned obsolescence, part of the culture and the heritage of every country to create product that could be reused. We have to go back to our past. And so emerging economies as well, they are reusing material, repurposing material, and it's about materials and metals and components, but also collections and stocks that we have in our manufacturers. So we are at the beginning of a journey, and I thank you for inviting us to start this journey together.
Yes, thank you, Paola, because we're also very inspired, that you will be co-hosting that with us. But I think the most important thing is that what we're going to showcase is also already work from designers that have done some of this work, the learning curve, and also, again, give practical tools. And we want feedback from the designers. Is it accessible? Maybe it's too difficult. Maybe the language is not clear. This is also, for us, a learning curve, how we can do better. And with that said, I would like to give the final word to Dr. Gaetano Cavalieri. Again, a warm-hearted thank you for hosting RGC at Vicenza Oro. It's becoming one of our favorite places in the world to come. And Gaetano, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Iris, and congratulations, Paola. You are doing, as usual, a wonderful job. Thank you for that. But just going on the same journey, meaning the sustainability journey. We have had the pleasure today to start all these sessions with the initial one before the jury voices with the presentation of what we have done, with the presentation that we did last year in September. So in 1 year time, another journey that we started the year before, so in nearly 2 years' time, which was the Sustainability Manager Educational Program. We are so proud to have presented this program today, and I was delivered with my personal certificate, which I did because we have tested on the field what the Sustainability Manager Program means, because we are fully committed to give to our members and non-members, in particularly of the jewelry industry, an extra module that we are going to build together, RJC and CIBJO and WDC and those that we are calling to help us, in order to let every single company, it doesn't make any difference if it's a big company, a medium company, or a small company, in any way, the possibility to have an access to these courses with different models in order to start or a better continuing a journey on sustainability through the sustainable manager that will drive and help them to grow. Because this is what we want, let the industry grow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you very much for being with us. I think that we can close the day today, and I look forward to see you very, very soon, here tomorrow, and in the immediate future to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.